And then we get a quieter moment, which again is what I love about this first episode, as we see Sam kind of sitting down, having a conversation with a new character, which we'll dive into and maybe talk a little bit about who he is in the comics. But we get Torres as he kind of sits down with Sam, and they have a little conversation about Sam's tech and how Sam's been working with the Air Force for 6 months, which is a great way to explain, okay, Sam, he was a fugitive in, from Winter Soldier, Infinity War, and Endgame, but now he's back into the fold, working for the Army again. But it's in this conversation that we get from Torres. He talks about the Flag Smashers. He talks about what they mean in regards to, there are people out there that enjoyed the blip. There were people out there which, not playing to play devil's advocate, to play against, how Thanos' mission might have been came into fruition. There are probably people that worship Thanos in this universe that probably really appreciate the fact, not to get morbid and sad and dark and twisted, but just think about it. In reality, I don't know how many, I'll just say, let's say there's 6 billion people in the world and 3 billion those people were gone. I would imagine that first year was rough. Obviously, people lost their families and all that, but economically speaking, opportunity-wise, there were probably a lot of people flourishing in this MCU within that 5-year gap. So there are people that enjoyed not having those people there. Again, not to get morbid, but once they come back, what now? So Amanda, just your take on Torres, his appearance in this show, and he's going to be a pivotal point because there's not, you don't just have a random guy coming in every now and then. He's going to be a big character, and Michael will probably allude to it in regards to maybe the connections to the comics. But just your take on Torres and a little bit of backstory with the Flag Smashers and just this conversation as a whole.
Yeah, I thought he was cool, especially because he was like fangirling over Sam Wilson. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, same. I'm like, I feel that, so that makes complete sense. So I love their dynamic, and it's just funny because he looks at Sam like he's just so in awe of him, and he's just so excited that he's an Avenger, and it's such a great connection. And of course, I did some Googles on Torres, and Michael's going to go into it. I'm excited to hear what he has to say. But yeah, I'm excited for that. The Flag Smashers at first, I'm really happy that Sam made fun of the name because like the name of the Flag Smashers is not really that intimidating.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as an extremist group, whatever you want to call them, like that's something that is going to be in the Captain America world.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, as a secondary plot point, I think it's going to be cool just to explore that in the episode.
No doubt, man. Chris, your take on this kind of quieter moment. Again, we see a couple walk up to our family, come up to Sam and say, Avengers, thank you so much for bringing us back. It's so crazy looking at the Avengers, and it's reality. They're celebrities, right? Which we'll talk about maybe the benefits that they don't get as Avengers for saving the world twice over. But your take on this scene, are you excited to learn more about Torres? And then again, just a little Easter egg in regards to, there's a thread out there by the name of Flag Smashers. In this world, there are people that like the blip and want to go back to that. Again, Baron Zemo, the world doesn't need heroes.
Yeah, I like the scene a lot, actually. That kid, the Torres kid, gave me some Dark Knight Rises Robin vibes. I was like,
yeah.
What are we doing here? There's just a lot of that he gave me. And I liked, it kind of gave me another, the family comes up and it's like, okay, our American heroes more celebrated overseas, which we've seen with a lot of, like, especially Black Americans, like Black celebrities.
Good point, yeah.
In our history, sometimes we don't appreciate what we have here, but then they have to go overseas to get like love and appreciation. Sometimes they want to leave.
Yeah.
So I thought about that. Then I thought about the people who would prefer life in the blip, which makes sense because it's like kind of sometimes like I'd be so excited to go outside, but like sometimes like, damn, I miss quarantine. Like I mean, like if you don't, I didn't die from COVID yet, so like I can say that, and like luckily my family and friends have been healthy. But there's some parts of it where I'll be like, you know what, damn, it was kind of relaxing. But of course I do want to go outside and turn up. But I understand that. But that whole scene made me realize how much I would love to see a blip show, like what it was like to be in it at that moment. So like that's like the biggest takeaway I had. And I was like, it's kind of like Fear of the Walking Dead. So I didn't even watch that show, but I feel like it was like another angle of The Walking Dead. So like if they were a show that said like, what was it like during this time? Like what, like some real life applications, like what was going on? I would love to see that kind of show down the line.
That's a great point, man. Because again, if you look at after the blip, Far From Home really didn't explore that too much. We went overseas, as you just mentioned, overseas. We didn't spend so much time in New York, but even in WandaVision, we were isolated in this Westview and don't really dive into it. And even with this show, and we'll see what the rest of this episodes have to offer. But I think it would be really interesting to see, who wasn't affected by, who lived through the blip. Again, Clint Barton with Hawkeye, She-Hulk, maybe she was lifted a blip and becoming an attorney and all that stuff. So I think there will be some shows and maybe even movies that dives into what that 5-year gap was in regards to what the world was like. But Michael, same with you, man. And again, diving into a little bit of the comics with Torres and what he can potentially mean for the show, and then also your thoughts on the Flag Smashers and the psychology of this of the people in this world want to go back to not the Dark Ages, but they want to go back to what life was like when there was half of humanity gone.
But yeah, I'm gonna take that last part first. But yeah, like Chris, because I mean, I kind of agree with that, because I think about when, like, in the very beginning of the pandemic, when basically everybody was staying home,
right,
and how open the roads were, like the highways were empty, like there was absolutely no traffic. It was like, dang, I could leave to go to work and look like much later because there's nobody on the road. Yeah. So I can imagine like those type of people, like, oh, I want to go back to, or even when you talk about Avengers Endgame, where Steve Rogers was like, well, look on the bright side. He was like, I haven't seen a dolphin in the harbor in the last couple of years. So I'm pretty sure if you get rid of 500 million people, like climate change and all that stuff would disappear. Yeah. Maybe somebody owned a house that you wanted. Now they're no longer there. You could go up in that house. So I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people that
jobs too. Like if you're working in
job opportunities.
Like, oh, the vice president got blipped. I'll do it. Whatever. Triple my salary. Like, I'm sure there's like a lot of people that were benefiting off of
I mean, even Hayward, like part of the reason he was able to move up is because Monica wasn't there, because she would have been the head of SWORD. And so that's part of why he tried to get rid of her so easily. So I can imagine that mentality, but I'm also glad they brought in the other perspective. Like when Sam said, usually when other people are thriving, somebody else is not thriving. So you might be happy that there's no traffic on the road, but then guess what? Somebody's also suffering in the hospital from COVID. So I'm glad they have both perspectives, but villains. So they got Flag Smashers, they got to go down. But in terms of Torres, I'm actually surprised because in terms of like looking at the casting announcements, stuff like that, I didn't see any hide or hair that this character was going to be introduced. So when they said, oh, Torres is going to be your man on the ground, I was like, wait, is that the same? Nah, it's probably not. It's probably just a coincidence. And then when I looked it up, I was like, oh, that's actually the same character. And so he for those of you that don't know, when Sam Wilson takes on the mantle of Captain America, Torres takes on the mantle of Falcon. Mm-hmm. And he basically becomes his de facto sidekick. I don't know how they're going to go, because I don't know if the MCU is going to address this, or maybe they just have him as a character, but he's not going to become Falcon, because in the comics, he actually has power. Like those wings that you see on his arms, those are actually his wings. Yeah. Like he's not a mutant, but he's a mutate. So what happened is he got, like, you see the bird right next to him, that's Red Wing, that's Falcon's bird, which they did change because in the MCU they made it to a drone, but in the comics it's an actual bird. His bird got kidnapped, and they used that bird to create Joaquin Torres as the Falcon. And so because of that, they have a telepathic connection, and he also has a telepathic connection with Sam. And so I don't know if they're going to go that route, and if they do make him the next Falcon, they're probably just going to give him another set of wings. Yeah. But I was happy to see her, and I like the chemistry that the two actors have. And funny enough, Marvel, when the scene with them sitting together like a coffee date and all that other stuff, Marvel kind of triggered me in this moment, only because I went into this show fully ready to ship Sam and Bucky.
Let's hear it, man. Yeah, the hashtag you created, man.
Yeah, the hashtags Falcon and Bucky. Fucky.
Oh my God.
I went fully in to ship them, but then they throw Torres in my way. I'm like, oh, come on now. Why are you doing this to me? Especially with him fangirling over and then the little I don't know. Plus, I was like, oh, he's kind of cute. And I was like, yeah, but I like Torres.
More the merrier.
He's an interesting.
I mean, it could be a poly thing. Granted, I know it's not going to happen. I know it's not going to happen. Disney, Marvel, but still, don't kill my fantasy.
Hey, man, you never know with these properties. But yeah, I think with Torres, it is something to explore. I think, like you just mentioned, Michael, there's certain characters that they do comic book accuracy backstories. But even with, like you just mentioned, with Falcon not having a Falcon he can talk to, it's a drone. They make it a little bit more acceptable or accessible for the public to be like, this guy's talking to birds, and you want me to be a fan of his versus. I mean, but you also got
Aquaman who talks to fish. Like,
very true. So who knows? We might get Sam talking to some birds by the end of this show, but who knows what can happen with. I think there's a lot to be said about Torres, as you mentioned with his comic book. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was like taken away from the borders, because I think this was 2017, which was right around the time of some political stuff of obviously building a wall and all that stuff, and the story that they had going there, and being experimented on is something that this show will probably focus on. We know what happened with Steve Rogers being an experiment, being created in the lab, as Iron Man says. We'll talk about Isaiah Bradley a little bit later. There's this theme of people getting experimented on. Wanda and Pietro, people against their will being experimented on. So maybe the reverse of the comics, Torres might want to be not a super soldier, but might want to have enhancements to fight, the Flag Smashers, because he gets his ass beat later in this episode. So he might need to have some type of enhancements to fight this war. So who knows what Marvel might do with this character, but I think it's someone to keep an eye out for. Yeah.
But I'm also like considering this is the thing that kind of gets me nervous. There's only 6 episodes and they're only 45 minutes each.
Right.
So I'm like, we're already we only have 5 more episodes left.
Yeah.
So I'm like, considering all of that, I'm like, I highly doubt, because there's a lot of threads that they need to talk, because we still haven't gotten Baron Zemo,
so Sharon Carter.
Sharon Carter. We have to get them into this scenario. We have to get him to have his shield back. The storyline with U.S. agents. So I'm like, because I know you're going to talk about later on with Isaiah Bradley, and I'm like, I've been saying for the longest time it would be a highly missed opportunity if they do not touch on the story of Isaiah Bradley. But I'm like, where's the time? I'm like, where's the time? Like, how then with Joaquin possibly becoming Phoenix? Like, I'm Phoenix. Whoa, wrong universe. Falcon. I'm just like, I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know where they're going to find the time for it. And then also you got to get Bucky's storyline in that as well.
A lot. I think, and keep in mind too, this is like you just mentioned, a mini series, and who knows, there might be a season 2 in the works. And I know they said that this is mostly just a one singular 6 mini series versus a series. But again, Falcon and Winter Soldier could translate to us Captain America 4. Thor got his 4th film, and we'll see what other Avengers get a 4 versus the trilogy. So this might be something to explore. And again, there are more shows to be had. There is a continuation of how we know Wanda ties directly into Doctor Strange 2 and Spider-Man into the in his film, but maybe this show will tie into Armed Wars, Secret Invasion, Miss Marvel. It might have a through line of, again, just certain storylines that might not be able to be fleshed out here, continue on in another show. So again, this is the beauty of Marvel, the beauty of comic books, of having this kind of thread line from show to movie to show to movie. So we'll see. But you just mentioned there's a lot to tackle.
I was gonna say, we were all complaining about WandaVision being like 23 minutes or 30 minutes an episode. Marvel's just like, okay, we'll give you longer episodes, but then we're gonna give you a shorter season. I'm like, come on, man.
We can't win.
We can't, pick your poison with that. But going back into the breakdown here, we hear Torres mention, hey man,